Okay, I think you can hear me now. Sorry about that. Okay, so Daniel chapter 5. Says in the beginning of the chapter, Belshazzar the king made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine in the presence of the 1,000. So it was the custom of like the kings back in the days to make big festivals, like big feasts. And there may be an indication that this was one of the feasts for the gods. But either way, it doesn't matter, like, what the purpose was. It was like a big feast, and they always wanted to show like their glory and wealth by those feasts. So it says Belshazzar the king made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords, and 1,000, of course, is an estimate, or like just a symbol of a big number of people. While he tasted the wine, Belshazzar gave the command to bring the gold and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple which had been in Jerusalem, that the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. So there's a couple of things here. First, that the king had his wives and his concubines with him in the feast, in the festival. Although we hear, for example, in the book of Esther, that the king was by himself, he didn't have his wives, and when he called for his wife Vashti to come, she didn't want to come. So it looks like it wasn't the custom for the wives to be there, maybe, and also maybe this is something more of the like characteristic of the Babylonians that than the Persians later on. But the request itself was kind of a little odd. He asked to bring all the gold, silver, and silver vessels that was taken from the Temple of Jerusalem, so that they would drink wine in it. So what was that all about? Like we're gonna see from Daniel's response at the end of the chapter, this was kind of uh, falling into pride and standing against God Jehovah, the God of the Jews. So he wanted to bring his vessels and the things that Nebuchadnezzar got from the Temple of Jerusalem to kind of despise that God and say, I am greater. I now have the authority, and this God is a defeated God, kind of. So they brought it to him, like we see in the next verse. Then they brought the gold vessels that had been taken from the temple of the house of God, which had been in Jerusalem. And the king his lords, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. So this again was an act of despising that God. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze and iron, wood and stone. So he drank in those vessels, him and everybody with him that was in that festival, and he praised his gods. So when he drinks from vessels of a god that he defeated his people, and then praises his gods, what kind of message is this? That my gods are greater. The gods that I worship are greater than that God. So of course, this was kind of an insult to God Himself. So that's why it says in the same hour, like immediately after. So God did not wait on him. He didn't give him like, much time. He said in the same hour, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. If you're familiar with like the old Egyptian like temples and stuff like that, you would always notice that the kings, they engrave like the stories of their glory, like for example, if they defeat an army or something, on the walls of their palaces or of the temples. So God engraved something on the wall of the palace of this King Belshazzar. And by the way, King Belshazzar was the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. So he saw, but he did not see a whole person writing. He saw only fingers writing, and fingers writing something on the plaster of the wall. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. So he only saw the part of the hand which was the front part, which is the fingers. Then the king's countenance changed, and his thoughts troubled him. So notice here, at the same time, in the same hour, going from being merry and insulting God, Jehovah, to his countenance, his appearance changed, and his thoughts troubled him, to being very scared, so that the joints of his hips were loosened and his knees knocked against each other. So, of course, this is, to describe how much fear he had at that point, that he couldn't even stand because his joints and hips were loosened. The king cried aloud, so he cried aloud out of fear, to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, the soothsayers. The king spoke, saying to the wise men of Babylon. So these are the wise men of Babylon. But notice again, he did something kind of strange. And this is the same thing that Nebuchadnezzar did before. That although he knew that Daniel was the best one to like decipher these things, to tell like the interpretation of the dreams, or maybe to read that writing, and of course he knew about Daniel, but he didn't ask for him. He asked for his astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. What does this mean? And we talked about this before, is that sometimes I feel that God is sending me a message. Of course, in this case, God is definitely sending him a message. And instead of going to the person, to someone close to God, someone who follows God that can decipher that message for me, or maybe even better, going to God Himself and praying, asking Him, what do you want to tell me? Like St. Paul said, for example, when he saw the bright light on the way to Damascus, he said, Lord, what do you want me to do? But he went to his own wise people. Maybe they would tell him something that would make him feel better about himself. And this is something dangerous. So if I always seek the people who make me feel good, that's dangerous, because at certain times in my life, I need to hear like something that may not be very comforting to me, but something that I need in order to change my ways, in order to fix something in my life. So he did not ask for Daniel. And then when he brought the wise people, he said, the king spoke, saying to the wise men of Babylon, whoever reads this writing and tells me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple. Purple was like very expensive clothing, because that dye was expensive, and have a chain of gold around his neck, and he shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. So usually the first ruler is the king himself. The second ruler may be either the queen or the son, like the prince. And then the third would be like one of the highest ranked rulers. So that's the highest thing anyone outside of the royal palace can attain, is to be the third ruler in the kingdom. Maybe also by the king choosing to ask for the wise people and not Daniel, this may be out of pride, that my people, the Babylonians, are great. They are the wisest people. They are the ones who know all the secrets. Now all the king's wise men came, but they could not read the writing or make known to the king its interpretation. The same exact thing that happened with his grandfather Nebuchadnezzar. And by the way, this same thing happens to us a lot, each one of us. That many times when I try to escape God's message, I don't want to hear what God wants to tell me. I want to hear something else. Sometimes God closes many doors so that I don't have anything to hear but His message. And this is exactly what happened to that king. Then King Belshazzar, when he saw that no one could help him, was greatly troubled. His countenance was changed, and his lords were astonished. So now he's even more scared, and the people around him, they got scared as well because of what his countenance changed to and the trouble that he was in. The queen, so we didn't hear about the queen until this part. The queen, because of the words of the king and his lord, so it looks like, there was a big, uh, like, any word traveling around that the king was in trouble. So the queen heard it and she came. And they say that this queen was actually not his wife, but it was his either mother or grandmother. So probably the wife of Nebuchadnezzar. Came to the banquet hall. So she came to him. The queen spoke, saying, O king, live forever. Do not let your thoughts trouble you, nor let your countenance change. So she wanted to comfort him, but based on what? There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy God. So that's the basis of his comfort. She said, do not be troubled because there is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy God. And who said that about Daniel before? Nebuchadnezzar. And in the days of your father, they call him father, but again, father could mean ancestor, like not just like the direct father. Light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, were found in him. You see, this testimony about Daniel, it continued from one generation to the other. Nebuchadnezzar saw that in him, his sons saw that in him, his even grandson, he heard this testimony about him. And this is true because the person who lives with God, God gives him honor and grace in the eyes of the people. And this is exactly what happened to Daniel because God gave Daniel wisdom more than anybody else. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father the king, made him chief of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. So it does seem like Daniel was not holding the same position at the time of Belshazzar, and maybe that's because, there are many theories, but maybe a couple of them is that when a new king comes, he comes with a new cabinet. So, like when Nebuchadnezzar died, maybe the next king, like his son, came with different people to rule. And also because Daniel was always envied by the Babylonians, especially that Daniel was a foreigner. So for them, for all the Babylonians to see a foreigner holding the highest position, and they are not, was something that they envied him for. Inasmuch as an excellent spirit, knowledge, understanding, interpreting dreams, solving riddles, and explaining enigmas were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Bel- Belteshazzar, now let Daniel be called, and he will give the interpretation. So she told him there is nothing that Daniel cannot do. And that's, of course, because he's not getting his wisdom from himself, but from God. So she asked the king to invite him or call on him to come in order to interpret the dream. Then Daniel was brought in before the king. The king spoke and said to Daniel, are you that Daniel who is one of the captives from Judah, whom my father, the king, brought from Judah? So, what do you think about this? Of course, it's kind of putting him down, like King Belshazzar was putting Daniel down. He said, are you that Daniel, the one I hear about, who is of one of the captives from Judah? And you are just a servant, you're a captive, whom my father, the king, brought from Judah. So you're just a captive that my father brought. So that was not, you know, the best way to start asking Daniel for something. I have heard of you. So he's as if he's telling him something that's going to elevate him. I have heard good things about you, that the Spirit of God is in you, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom are found in you. So I heard, and he said the witness of his grandmother. Now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought in before me, that they should read this writing and make known to me its interpretation. But they could not give the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of you that you can give interpretations and explain enigmas. So he told him that, I have a problem. There is something that no one can help me with, and I heard that you can do it. And all the wise men of Babylon could not do it. So here's the deal that he gave him. Now, if you can read the writing and make known to me its interpretation, you shall be clothed with purple. You shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around your neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. So he told him that if you uh, tell me the interpretation of this, sorry, if you tell me the interpretation of this, I will make you the third man in the kingdom, and you shall have chain of gold around your neck, and you shall be clothed with purple. So what was Daniel's response? Then Daniel answered and said before the king, let your gifts be for yourself. Notice here, Daniel's answer was completely different from the way he answered Nebuchadnezzar. Even when Nebuchadnezzar actually did not follow God after the first encounter, and he knew, he saw the other dream, and Daniel was telling him that he was going to be like, his heart would change to be like the beasts for 7 years or for like a long time. Daniel, his thoughts troubled him at that time, and he felt bad for Nebuchadnezzar, and he spoke with him very respectfully. But with Belshazzar, he did not speak respectfully. Or not, I mean, he's still respectful as speaking to a king, but he spoke harshly with him. He said, let your gifts be for yourself, and give your rewards to another. I do not want your money. I'm not here for your money. So he spoke with him harshly. He did not speak like that to Nebuchadnezzar, but still respectfully, and still Daniel was always knew how to talk to people in the right way. But you will see that this king, he deserved that way that Daniel talked with him, and we'll see that in a second. Yet I will read the writing to the king and make known to him the interpretation. So why, if Daniel didn't want the gifts and did not maybe like this king as much as Nebuchadnezzar, why did he still interpreted the writing for him? Because this was the message of God. Although, no matter how Daniel feels about that king, he had to relay the message. And this is a nice message to us too, that it doesn't matter who I'm talking to, it doesn't matter, like, if I have them in high regard or not. If I have a message from God to those people, if I have a service that I'm offering to those people, then this is my duty. O king, the most high God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father a kingdom and majesty, glory and honor. So Daniel started talking to him about his grandfather. And because of the majesty that he gave him, all peoples, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. So he told him that your grandfather was a great man, and everybody feared him. But this was given to him by who? By God. The Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father. Whomever he wished, he executed, of course, by the wish of God. Whomever he wished, he kept alive. Whomever he wished, he set up, and whomever he wished, he put down. But when his heart was lifted up, you remember in when we talked about the story of Nebuchadnezzar seeing that dream, and that about the tree that was gonna be cut off, but its roots like stay. What was that? That was Nebuchadnezzar. His heart was lifted up. You remember when he went to his balcony and said, "This is the great Babylon that I built with my glory and honor and everything." And his spirit was hardened in pride. So when he didn't listen to God, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. Then he was driven from the sons of men. His heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was with the wild donkeys. They fed him the grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God rules in the kingdom of men and appoints over it whomever he chooses. So now Daniel is repeating or summarizing the story of what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. But you, his son, now this is the message to him, but you, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, although you knew all this. So you see, this is the key to this chapter, that Belshazzar did not humble his heart. Although he knew about what happened to Nebuchadnezzar, he knew that Nebuchadnezzar was proud or fell in pride, and he knew that God humbled him, and he knew that that God was Jehovah, the God of the Israelites. But although he knew all that, he did not humble himself. Of course, that's something very harsh, but that's something that's a very harsh message for us too, that whoever knows more is asked for more, and we know a lot. Uh, so so this was the mistake, and that explains to us why this was such a big deal that he brought the vessels of gold at the beginning of the chapter and started drinking in them. And you have lifted yourself up against the Lord of heaven. So he told him, you put yourself against God, against the Lord of heaven. They have brought the vessels of his house before you, and you and your lords, your wives, and your concubines have drunk wine from them. And you have praised the gods of silver and gold, bronze and iron, wood and stone, which do not see or hear or know. So now this is his sin, what he did at the beginning of the chapter. Instead of humbling himself before God, he lifted himself up and he brought the vessels and he despised God and he praised his idols. And the God who holds your breath in his hand and owns all your ways, you have not glorified. So you have glorified idols, but you have not glorified the Lord, the God that holds your breath in his hand and owns all your ways. This is a nice verse. So, this could apply to me and you as well. That every time I lift up my heart against God, or every time that I go seeking idols of the world, I'm doing the same thing. But it's nice to remember this. God is the one who is holding my breath in his hand and owns all my ways. He's the one in control. He's the one that created me. He's the one that gave me life. He's the one that's expecting me to come back to him. Everything is created by God and everything goes back to him. Then the fingers of the hand were sent from him. So this is why you saw the writing. Daniel is talking to Belshazzar. This is why you saw the writing. And this writing was written. And this is the inscription that was written. So now he's going to start explaining it. Many, many tekel upharsin. So 4 words. One of them repeated twice, many, many. And then tekel is the third word, or the second word, and then upharsin is the third word. This is the interpretation of each word. Many means God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. So the number of days of your kingdom, like it's numbered and it's going to be finished. Tekel means you have been weighed in the balances. So tekel means balance. You have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Like when they put you in the balance, you went up in the balance, meaning that you did not have any weight, any spiritual weight on the balance. Perez, and actually very close to Persia, from the kingdom that's going to take over. Your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and Persians. So the number of days of your kingdom is limited. You have not weighed in the balance, or you have weighed in the balance and found wanting. And then the third is your kingdom is divided and it will be given to the Medes and the Persians. We talked about the Medes and the Persians before when we talked about the statue, that the image that Nebuchadnezzar saw. So remember, the image was the head of gold was Nebuchadnezzar, and then the body of silver was the Medes and the Persians, the next kingdom that comes after the Babylonians. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and they clothed Daniel with purple and put a chain of gold around his neck. So he did what he promised him, maybe because um, although Daniel gave him a harsh message, but maybe because he already promised him, maybe because uh, he felt that this was not going to come soon or not going to happen soon, so I don't need to worry about it. But he maybe because he was embarrassed, in front of the other people, but he fulfilled his promise to Daniel. And although Daniel did not agree to all this at the beginning, but it doesn't say here that he refused. So why is that? Some people say maybe because he didn't want to, he knew that the Persians are going to come soon and take the kingdom, so he didn't want to look like a traitor, like he didn't want to cooperate with the Babylonians. Others say maybe this was the will of God because when the Persians came, actually, the Persians came that night and took over the kingdom. Maybe Daniel, like when they saw him as the third man in the kingdom, that was kind of a good way of explaining what happened to them about the vision and everything, and using Daniel in a higher rank as well, which is what's going to happen. And put a chain of gold around his neck and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. That very night, that very night. And you can see from this chapter that looks like God gave Belshazzar many chances before, but because he knew a lot about what happened before and he didn't humble himself, that was his last chance, and he didn't use it. So that very night, Belshazzar, king of the Chaldeans, was slain. So in the same night he died, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. So that same night, the Medes and Persians, they like broke into the walls of Babylon and they took over the city. And this tells us a couple of things. He started seeing the writing the same hour he brought the vessels, as if God is telling him, this is happening to you because of that. This is happening to you. This message is, I'm sending you because you despise me. And then the punishment happened like the same night because he did not humble himself. So that's the chapter 5, the story of King Belshazzar and the writing on the wall. Um, we have one more chapter that talks about another story, which is a famous one. Chapter 6 talks about Daniel in the lion's den. And then after that, 7 to 12 is going to be a different theme. And the first 6 chapters of Daniel talk about stories. The last 6 chapters talk about prophecies, things that are going to happen in the future. And a lot of them, there is a lot of resemblance between those 6 chapters and what we read, some of the stuff we read in the book of Revelation. Glory be to God forever. Amen. If anyone would like to add or comment on anything, please go ahead.